Hey guys, this is Pedro back with another interview, this time covering Masters Toronto, this time during finals weekend and in person. My guest at this time, someone that I grabbed by the side following day one of finals weekend, is Yehty. He is an observer, most specifically he is an in-game director of the observer team taking part in VCT Masters Toronto. Yehty, thank you so much for the opportunity, really do appreciate it. First and foremost, day one is done. What's going through your mind, how are you feeling, and how has the ambience been in this competition?
So yeah, honestly, so far it's been really solid. I'm enjoying the games. Everything's been quite close, quite tight. No three mappers just yet, but we still had some really nice games, some really awesome plays that we've been able to catch and stuff. But the games have been great. The atmosphere has been wonderful. All the fans, it's always a blast to kind of just see how many people come out or how many people are fans of VALORANT, fans of these teams, fans of these players, right? So the more I get around the atmosphere and see that and hear that, that's the big thing. Hearing it, all that cheering, all that stuff, even though we have noise canceling headphones in the back end, that we still hear that crowd come roaring through. So being in this atmosphere is just incredible.
And I do understand this. You're Canadian, right? And this also must be a special feeling just having to do this in a Canadian environment, Canadian event, Canadian crowd, and all that stuff. So obviously you've been doing this for a very long time, covering VALORANT as an observer. But does it hit different for you to just know that this is in Toronto, this is in Canada, your hometown, your home country?
Oh yeah, for sure. The cool thing about this is obviously it's the first one that's a major in my own home country, but it's also the first thing of this scale that has been in this country for VALORANT, right? There's been smaller stuff that I've gone to as a fan and stuff like that, or just helped out with in terms of events within the Toronto area. One of the biggest things that a lot of people in the scene kind of know about is the Toronto VALORANT or TVAL events that have happened here in the past. Those have been great, wonderful events. The people who run them are insane, but we've never had anything to this scale. And the best part about having it in the city, essentially a second hometown for myself, right, is all the people that I know from within the industry and the scene that are here to enjoy the space and to enjoy the atmosphere of the event, right? A lot of those people that I either worked with when I was doing or just starting out within broadcasting, all those people I worked with on those events, all the people that I've seen and met up with at the Toronto VALORANT events, they're all here every single day, checking out everything, doing stuff around town, having dinner. So everything kind of feels like a local home community with a bunch of just friends and family basically all together. So the thing about having I guess the home country experience is being able to just reconnect with a lot more of your friends and stuff around town.
No, yeah, for sure. I mean, for those of the viewers who are not really familiar with my line of work before pivoting towards YouTube, I've actually talked to you back in 2022, back then when I was mostly a writer for Fragster.com, and I'll send a link into the description for those who want to take a look at his career. But you've been doing this for basically your entire adult life, right? And so you've been covering various games, different games, Rainbow Six is one that comes to mind, and obviously you pivoted over to VALORANT once the game was launched and you had that drive to continue it. And now you're at a point in which you've been observing for major international events for a long time. Talk to me about your story and how were you able to go from figuring out what you wanted to do to now being a key contributor to this kind of observing.
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, I kind of with this and with my story and my leap up to working these kind of events, I have to thank St. Clair College. It's a college I went to study for esports administration and entrepreneurship. And that was kind of my initial, I guess, foot in the door for the industry. They had a broadcast program. They were teaching all of this stuff regarding broadcasting and esports there. It was something I thought I would really enjoy, and I went into it, and that was the initial leap for things. So I have to shout that out because that's been a big part of my journey, not just within my career, but also a lot of other people's careers that are within this area of Toronto and stuff too. So that was my initial kickstart, and then COVID came around, VALORANT came out. Prior I was just doing small tier 3 kind of things, but after that, VALORANT kind of took off, and I was just in the right place, the right time to kind of get involved in the early challenger scene, and then make a name for myself, a portfolio, a decent show reel of stuff. to be able to like get the right people to notice me from the Riot side in order to start working all these like global and international events. So yeah, that rise, I will say, was very quick in comparison to a lot of people in the industry. It's a big mixture of, I can't deny some form of talent, but also a lot of luck and a lot of good connections that really helped, leap me up into like this side of the scene in the industry.
When it comes to looking over and covering this game, it is different from other FPS titles in the sense that like there's a lot of things happening all at once. I mean, I already covered this topic with you back then in our previous conversation, but like, with the evolution of the game going from like just people trying to figure out how, certain agents and abilities work to now using that in tandem to like throw off their adversaries. How difficult is it for you to just oversee that evolution from an observer's standpoint, and what has been the most important aspect that you had to like focus on as an observer to record everything?
Oh yeah, so like I guess one thing a lot of people don't realize or think about when it comes to the observing side is I guess how knowledgeable with the game we have to be. The primary focus for like me and a lot of the work that I've been doing has been understanding the strategy of the game. So I spend as much time as I can either before the event, during the event, VOD reviewing, studying, taking notes. I have like a massive Google Doc just filled with like team strats and other things I've seen from all the time I've spent, watching previous games and VOD reviewing. And that understanding of strategy and how to showcase that strategy, the right angles to take to make all that utility usage like apparent, right? All that's getting more and more complex as the game progresses and as the players and teams learn more. So we need to keep up with that, right? As much as we can. I try to talk to as many like coaches as I can in the off season just to like pick their brains about stuff, be like, what do you think is going to happen with like the meta and other things? I was like, with Teo obviously being nerfed, hard the month before this event, like a lot was up in the air. We weren't sure like what was going to happen meta-wise. So on top of my own studying, I like to try to just pick the brains of pros and, other teams and stuff and just see what like they're thinking and, get an idea of like what to expect going into it. The big goal is within esports over the last like however many years it's been another thing. Observing has been very reactive focused, capturing stuff in the moment. But I'm trying to make more of a shift towards proactiveness, understanding what's going to happen even before some of the players might understand what they want to do, right? So the more on top of things we can be by like studying and understanding and playing the game, the better the end product's going to be.
I'm kind of curious on what you view as what is the most like exciting match or most difficult match that you ever had to observe like in your career in this game?
Oh God, man, it's kind of hard to say because we've done so many over the years. Like to pick like one that was like maybe the hardest or like the most intense. I would say one of the most memorable for sure though was probably like the EG champs run, and especially like the grand finals of that in LA like a few years ago. There was something about that just like that weight of that storyline carries through, and that kind of like energy and that focus on storyline, it fuels us as observers too. So that's become, I think, maybe like the most memorable, one of the ones that like always pops into my mind the most, just surrounding the whole aspect of that run and that finals, right? But no, we've had like a lot of good ones here too. It's always so hard to pick like one that's like the favorite because we go through so many. I even like forget sometimes the ones that I've done like way in the past that were really, really good. But yeah, no, like if I had to pick one that was like my all-time just like most memorable, I did like really, really well on, was really proud of, and had like one of the best like storyline finishes, like it had to have been that grand finals matchup.
It also reminds me of that one Calm Around the World play, like the build up to that. I saw it live in the forum, and that was a great moment. Everybody lost their minds when Calm pulled off that 1v2 clutch play, and it would have been done without your contribution and all that good stuff. You mentioned about having to grind your way to the very top. As you now are on theoretically quotation marks on the top, what do you feel you have to do in order to keep your game up, maintain your top condition, your top form, your top mentality in an industry like this?
Well, no matter like, I guess what kind of role you're in within esports, a lot of it is going to be like freelance work. So you're always going to have competition, in and amongst like the scene for things. The number one thing to kind of go along with like my strategy points from before is, you got to constantly elevate yourself and your product and your work the same way that these players are elevating like themselves and their strategies and stuff. It's that constant, skill curve that's always increasing, right? And the more the game's out, the more people like around you are also learning and understanding. I definitely had like a good head start getting into like the game, right as it came out, because there was no idea of like how should we observe this, right? I was able to craft that a lot from the get-go or from nothing. But now there's a lot of people like taking from that, learning from that. So there's always gonna be other people that are constantly improving and getting better. A good example is like our other free cam observer, Ty. Dude is absolutely phenomenal. Like he came in when we needed like a replacement for someone within the last few years, and like he showed up, filled the shoes that we needed super well, and I'm really fucking proud of him. Like he's been doing a wonderful job. But yeah, like honestly, the number one thing is just always try to stay ahead, right? Always try to be innovating, improving on things. We're always watching back our own VODs, trying to get feedback from like casters, production, other people in the scene. Another big one is watching our own film back as a casual viewer. Because when you're in the moment observing it, you kind of see it from that back end perspective. Like, oh, I knew this was going to be happening. I didn't know this was going to be happening. Maybe I did something that I thought was in time, but was a little bit too fast or too slow. So when you watch back over it again and again, you like as like a viewer in mind, it gives you a better perspective as to like what you're showing as like an end product, right? So yeah, just the constant elevation is definitely like the number one focus.
With you being on top and me being able to take a hold of like, or not really take a hold, that's not really the right way to say, but to view your story, your overall projection from that first encounter in 2022 up until now, 2025, 3 years since that point, what has been the one thing that you're most proud of, as like an individual? Do you feel like it's something like something within the game or outside of it? What do you think?
I think the number one thing I'm just like the most proud of, and this is like one of the big motivators for me as a whole, like to do this kind of thing, is just to see people like, happy with the end product, to give people an experience. At the end of the day, this is like, it's all entertainment for a bunch of people to, kick back, relax, feel emotions for, right? Whether they're like happy, excited emotions, or like let down, like sad, or like, the rough moments, whether teams win or lose. So being able to be like a part of that, to make, sense of that, and to give people like a wonderful experience where they're like getting excited or on the edge of their seat kind of thing, that's definitely like the most satisfying thing and the number one thing I'm the most proud of. There's nothing that really like gives me butterflies or gets me like more excited than showing a certain shot, maybe of like two players like right next to each other not realizing, and hearing a crowd just like roar in like excitement or laughter. Like that is by far the number one like most satisfying thing about it. So.
And for sure, hopefully, you can continue this story for yourself and all that good stuff. And, Yehty, thank you so much for the opportunity for the interview. And of course, we'll be seeing more of what you do in the ensuing matches of Masters Toronto and beyond.
Yeah, thank you so much.